Evening, everyone.
Good evening. You have broken the silence.
Yep, somebody had to.
Let's wait two more minutes, I guess.
It's all good.
Okay, so we are 3 minutes into the meeting. I expect there will be late joiners eventually joining in and asking what this is about. Okay, so the topic is, as has been raised, requested by, I think, Felivier and also Helmut, to talk about generals compatibility goals. Right, so right now our main goal has been from the start to retain the 0 hour compatibility for retail for a first, second release also, so that we can onboard the general multiplayer community. Generals from the beginning was not on our radar. It really just started coming into focus when we thought, hey, why don't we replicate our fixes to generals? What do we do with it? And then Felivier suggested, hey, let's merge both code bases into one, because there are a lot of overlaps. And so we started doing this, and it is progressing, and it goes smoothly, although slowly. But progress is being made. But there is, of course, a risk. The more stuff we cram from 0 hour into generals, the higher the chance of breaking compatibility. Because as we have seen, even touching the smallest things in 0 hour already breaks compatibility. For example, enabling logging or changing an innocent looking vector to a hash map caused a mismatch. So some small changes here and there can already break game logic. So it looks like once we get into some more juicy pieces in logic related classes and code, that mismatch will be likely. So the question is, what do we want to do? Do we say we just want to drag generals along with 0 hour to allow generals benefit from the additions and fixes we introduced to that code base, and have that in generals available, and just the data works and people can start the campaign and can play multiplayer missions, but it won't be compatible with the retail game? Or do we say it would be nice to have compatibility with Generals 1.08, because there is a big catalog of 20 years of replays, and maybe people have some save games, or maybe there is some players that are interested in multiplayer compatibility for some reason, although the multiplayer community is almost non-existent. So maybe we can gather some thoughts on this matter in this meeting, and come to a strategy. Do we have any opinions on this?
How non-existent is almost non-existent? Do we have like numbers on that?
Well, I guess I don't have any metrics, but I can take a quick look at our Gentoo server, see how many replays are being uploaded there. Let me send the link here for reference. So basically, the most players use Gentoo application, and that uploads the replays to this data dump. And as you can see, every day there are uploads in April. Yeah, there are a couple of matches here and there, but it's pale in comparison to 0 Hour. 0 Hour will have thousands of uploads, folders, players, and generals, yeah, maybe hundreds, lower hundreds, maybe less. Yeah.
And it wouldn't be a terrible idea to have compatibility with what is already there, but if nobody cares, then nobody cares. So it's just I guess it's just up to whether or not we want to like work on this now or later. Like if we keep compatibility now, we can always break it later for another patch, and then bring it all to the 0 Hour standard.
There certainly is a strategy where we could say, so right now the status quo is that we already started unifying tools and some of WW Vegas, and that hasn't broken compatibility as far as we know. So both generals and 0 Hour are compatible with the major retail versions. Yeah. So right now everything's compatible. Maybe there's a strategy where we say we just keep on like unifying things, but when we reach a spot where we say right now at this point it becomes too risky to move on unifying because it would require too many if def generals, else 0 Hour, do this and that, like code differences to keep these separate. Then we say, okay, we stop unifying, we just concentrate on fixing towards the first release for 0 Hour in generals, and we push that out, and only after we are comfortable with breaking both games, then we continue unifying things. Maybe that is a strategy.
I think that'd be probably the safest option. But if that's assuming that there's a lot of like generals players that are, very interested in having this generals version.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Thanks. I wanted to ask you if you can maybe explain what you have merged so far, because I haven't followed that very closely, and how much effort it was.
Yeah, so right now we have merged partly good part of WW Vegas libraries. So these contain WW Mars and 3D2 and these kind of things. They are mostly in line except for 3D2. But it looks like these things can be merged without breaking compatibility, right? And without incurring functional differences in the games. Then there are all the tools. Like there are tools that have been mostly a match already, like the small tools. The bigger tools like World Builder, that's another story because they're very involved with game engine. So that doesn't look feasible yet. That requires merging together with game engine. So, but game engine we haven't merged at all yet. There's nothing unified, right? But Thompson's has already reviewed some things, and there are like lower level systems, like the file system stuff and Xfer stuff. Serialization library that can be merged, right? So some lower level systems can probably be merged, but game logic stuff very risky, right? So maybe like if we just like merge things that are safe, that enables us to provide like for example, what Filivi does, he plugs in new libraries to replace Bing and audio stuff, right? So like these things can already be unified and can serve both games in core, but other things may not. So it will be a bit of a puzzle, right?
So I have an opinion regarding your compatibility issues with original game. I'm not really involved in the developing new patch, but as a developer, I may say that I think it's a good idea to release some a community patch with minimal fixes, just not to break anything. And then when the community adopts a new community patch, then enable like some fixes that are that may break compatibility or cause mismatches, and maybe even like develop a feature of auto updating the community patch, so like it will be seamless for the users, so they don't see that they are installing a new version of it and break compatibility. I think it's a good idea to let community install the new community patch and see the stats, the analytics of how many people are actually using the community patch, comparing it to Gentle, and then make a decision on top of that.
I just wanted to add, I'm looking at the Gen Tool data that you linked, and I'm seeing enough games that I would be hesitant to just like throw away compatibility for these people. Like they exist. There's not a lot, but there's enough that I think someone would be mad if they lost all their replays and stuff. So that's just my opinion on that.
I guess the other side of compatibility isn't necessarily just multiplayer, but also single player. Because if there's some considerable changes in how the game works in 0 Hour, it may break even just the single player aspect of the game.
Well, if it's only fixes that are breaking multiplayer games, like I don't know, replacing some internal data structure that causes mismatches, so it won't affect single player because it's a network issue.
So for 0 Hour, it has been the goal from the start to pursue this exact strategy, to release a first client or even second client with just fixes that doesn't break compatibility. Our concern here is do we also want to pursue the same for Generals, which is like the earlier game of the two, but it doesn't have as big of a community and doesn't have as big of a desire, right? There's no such discussion like this. We discussed it a few times in text, like what do we do? And now we have the first meeting about this. So we want to figure out, do we want to retain compatibility or do we want to scrap it straight away and not care at all? Right?
Oh, you mean the original Generals, not 0
Yes,
Hour?
yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I think following the same strategy with 0 Hour, that it would be the same idea. If people want to play the original game, like having that community patch in a state where it's compatible with everything that came before is kind of a nice thing to have. Whether or not they actually do that or not, I mean, there are some people doing it, so yeah, I wouldn't want to break that for them. It's up to you guys what you want to do, though.
This might be obvious, but we don't force people to use our new patch. They can still play the old game. So if we decide to not support Generals anymore, they would still be able to play the old game.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea if you want to watch an old replay of old game, you just install like a previous version of the game. I think it's how it works with other games too. Like if you like have a Minecraft world that was generated at some really old version, like from 20 years ago, you install the old version of the game, and you launch your really old world. That's how it should work here, I guess, too.
I guess the question is whether or not we want to give them a patch first so that they have some fixes before we go unifying the code base. I guess you could have a discussion about dropping support, but I don't know if that's where we want to go. It just seems like we've already put some work into it.
Certainly, long term, I think there is great value in having a generals client alongside the 0-hour client. And when we make this decision now that we certainly want to support generals, and I think we do so far, I think it makes everything harder. Like this unifying process makes it hard, and maintaining 2 code bases until it's unified, it's much more work, makes everything slower. But long term, I think it's great value because it is generals is very similar to 0-hour, but it's still a unique experience. And there are even 0-hour players from time to time like playing generals. And so having like a really well-polished generals on top of a well-polished 0-hour is a great way to have like 2 games instead of just 1, right? So long term, I think there's real value. Short term, obviously, it sucks because it makes everything super complicated.
Is there anybody actually here who likes to play generals? Or has played generals in the last year or so?
I played the single player campaign again, but not multiplayer or skirmish, other than for testing.
Yeah. And for single player, we shouldn't also forget that there's Justin's repo. He, I think, basically focuses on generals and already has implemented a bunch of features. And I think for single players would be the logical choice to use his version.
Yeah, I think it has definitely value if we keep supporting generals just for the single player and a lot of the custom single player maps that have been made. I think, but that's my opinion. It's the single player campaign is amazing, and a lot of those custom maps as well. And it would be more amazing if with better graphics or better performance or whatever we will be introducing in the next in the coming time, could improve the experience of that. I think, and I think that's the other part of the topic tonight is: do we want to maintain compatibility with skirmish replays and multiplayer? And I think a consideration there as well. EA already broke that. 1.08 and 1.09 in generals are no longer compatible. You can't play replays in 1.09 that have been made with 1.08 or before. And also a 1.09 client cannot connect to 1.08 client. And that's not the case with 0-hour. 0-hour 1.04 and 0-hour 1.05 are completely compatible. So I think it's, and maybe I'm looking there at Joker, or I don't think Scotsman is here, what their experience is with the general multiplayer players is, are they playing still in 1.08 or have they moved on with 1.09? Which would also says something about how, at what level we would need to keep compatibility.
I guess another way to think about compatibility at the moment and being able to replay or use replays is that they're basically our only litmus test to know that we haven't broken something when we do actually make changes. So there is that other aspect of considering maintaining compatibility because we've got nothing else at the moment which tells us that we've broken some underlying system in a way that we don't realize at the moment. So that's one way to think about it as well.
Hey, real quick, if EA already broke compatibility, aren't we using their code base as the basis for this?
So the EA code is based on Generals 1.08 and 0hour 1.04, which are the last patch of the CD versions from 2004-5, so from 20 years ago. And the last Steam update, that was Generals 1.09 and 1.05 for 0 hour. And these, the 0 hour update was compatible with the previous 0 hour version, but the Generals version is not multiplayer compatible with the previous Generals version.
What did they break?
Well, EA has made some edits that puts the CRC out of sync, and so they mismatch.
That's a shame.
But this patch, it's not open source yet. We don't have access to that.
Generals also has the problem that the executable CRC check is enabled in the network lobby, so these guys cannot match anyway, right? Because the executable CRC check will prevent them from joining the same match in the lobby. Whereas on 0 hour, that code is commented out, which allows any executable to join any other, even if it's not compatible.
I guess in that instance, we could still spoof the CRC for the lobby. It's just figuring out what the executable CRC is at that point.
That's definitely required then, yeah. And for 0 hour, we probably also want to enable this executable CRC check and also fake it for as long as we want to fake it, so that if like mods make their custom version that has logic changes, and they wouldn't collide with retail players that use our patch.
So what a couple of people now have mentioned is that it would be nice to have a Generals client. And I agree with it. I don't think anybody disputes that. But the problem is it's a lot of effort to do this. And if we decide to do all the coding and basically two code bases, it basically means that we delay our patch for 0 hour for maybe, I don't know, 4-6 months, would be my estimate. So it would be detrimental to the 0 hour community, in my opinion. So that's something we should consider when we make this decision. The merging process has now taken, I don't know, a couple of weeks. And so far, some tools were merged, but nothing of the really, in my opinion, essential parts of the game. And those are the parts that will be quite complicated to merge. So in my opinion, it will take a lot of time. And in my opinion, it's not much benefit to merge this or to keep even both games well, I think you understand what I mean?
Yes, absolutely makes sense. I agree. It probably will make things slower as we move on. Yeah, definitely.
There's also just the fact that like EA has already broken things and we don't have access to their code, so we don't really like, we're kind of operating in this weird space where it's like the community patch, if we make a patch for the CD version, then people will have to check whether or not they're on the Steam version or the CD version before they implement the patch. So we would need some sort of, probably like an installer to determine that, which complicates this whole thing.
Well, it's only the executable that is mismatching, right? It's not the game data itself. So my expectation is that most players will actually default to Generals 1.08 after updating their Steam clients, because that is what Gen Patcher tool will push to the players. And also Gen tool is incompatible with Generals 1.09 and 0 Hour 1.05. So players are sort of pushed to the older versions anyway. I don't think there is much adoption for 1.09 and 0 Hour 1.05.
Are we going to integrate those later, assuming we get the code from EA?
I actually haven't launched I haven't launched the 1.05 0 Hour. I can't tell you if it's great or not great. As far as I'm aware, it mostly has the Steam Workshop integration to push maps to Steam and have users download these maps that are being published there. To me, I mean, it basically just allows modders to distribute maps. That's a core feature. Other than this, I'm not aware about the kind of fixes that were applied to the clients. It might be just minor things. I don't know. As far as I'm aware, all the major crashes are still in the clients. So as far as I'm aware, there is nothing of major values in the Steam updates that were rolled out 2 months ago.
That's fair.
Question: would the merge of Generals and 0 Hour be easier if we break replay and multiplayer compatibility with Generals? Would that speed up the process of merging these two code bases?
It would certainly allow to be less considerate about Generals. We still need to be considerate about 0 Hour, but we are not pulling much stuff from Generals into 0 Hour, so it's less of a concern. We are pulling more into Generals, right? And what this allows to do is that if that we can more, I mean, we still need to be careful, like having close look at this, because we also need to port stuff from Generals that is exclusive to Generals and required that needs to go into 0 Hour, right? Otherwise, Generals wouldn't be able to run on a 0 Hour base. So there still needs to be like evaluation of what needs to be merged together. But it would be much easier because like it will be madness to merge anything logic related, because like as Helmut has shown, like enabling logging or inlining or anything that changes something can change the assembler in ways that changes the calculations in subtle ways, and then the floating point mass yields just a tiny little difference and everything falls apart. I mean, there just needs to be a super tiny difference in logic and it breaks, right? And I would say it will not be feasible to merge many parts of logic that are very different between the games. So these files would need to remain exclusive in Generals until we say, now we can unify these things. And that's why, like, if my proposal here would be that we say, okay, we don't unify everything yet. We just unify everything non-logic related that we are comfortable with, all the low-level systems, all the rendering stuff that we can get. And we stop then. And then the logic stuff remains separate. The headers and CPPs are just separate. And then later on, when we say 0 Hour is good to break and Generals is good to break, then we can continue unifying and be more aggressive. That to me would be a fine approach, because there's no pressure to there's no pressure to unify, to complete the unification, right? We can still have parts separate because we can still replicate things on both code bases, right? it's not much of a hassle to replicate that thing in generals. Or we can say, okay, we only fix it in 0 hour, we don't even replicate it in generals, and then only later when we unify it, then generals will inherit this fix, right? This could be the case when the diff between generals and 0 hour is so large that it's unfeasible to replicate a certain fix from 0 hour to generals. And then we can say, okay, for this first patch, generals doesn't get this fix, only 0 hour got it, but later when we unify, then generals will get it, right?
I think that's the way to go. I think you're right.
Well, in my opinion, even this approach is too much work for us, because even if we somehow manage to merge it somehow in the future, we will still have to test every change we make on 2 games. We will have major problems with the assets because we will never be able to merge all the assets for both games. So each time we change anything in the assets, we have to make sure that both games will still work. And we also shouldn't forget that the merging process itself is a lot of work, and we could spend this time, in my opinion, much better improving 0 hour. And don't forget, only 10% of players is, at least according to Gentool, are using this. And it's also a question if how many percent of these players will actually use our patch and not go to Justin's repo or something else, or just stay on the original game. So my opinion is still it's just wasted work if we do this.
Can you elaborate on the data maintainability?
My understanding is that you have a repository for the code and one for the data that was already created around Corona some years ago, and you already have quite a few patches there. And I think the goal is to eventually merge those things so the players can actually benefit from those. And if we want to keep both games alive, we have to find a way to somehow merge this or buy these patches only to 0 hour or something. But in my opinion, it will be just a lot of work to keep all the data in sync.
Yeah, so the patch repository that contains the data, like the assets and the script files. And yes, this only targets 0 hour. It doesn't target generals at all. Now, some files could be moved to generals, because keep in mind that 0 hour still uses stuff from generals. So 0 hour has dependency on generals data. Like it uses models, textures, and I think that's mainly it. Models, textures, maybe something else. Sounds definitely, yeah. So there are some data dependencies. All the ini files, so the script files that generate the game logic, like for objects and so on, that is that is separate. Basically, 0 hour has just made a copy of generals, just like the code, and then has changed it. So that's already separate. I think as long as our code core doesn't break compatibility with the legacy data, then there shouldn't be an issue with running both data sets. So if we don't break compatibility with the legacy ini files, the SCB files, the map files, textures and models, then it would just work. And 0 hour does inherit, since it does inherit a lot of data from generals, so it needs to keep that compatibility as well, right? Unless otherwise all the data needs to be migrated in a way to accommodate. Yeah, but I don't think that's a big worry. And I mean, we don't have in 0 hour we already have the desire to not break compatibility with retail asset formats because of mods, right? So we probably don't want to build a client that breaks compatibility with all sorts of mods out of the box, right? Where you cannot launch Rise of the Reds data and so on, right? So ideally, it is well compatible, right? And so it's not just in terms of generals, but also in terms of zero-hour mods. And I think that's a good goal to have, to not break this.
And I think like long term, like very long term, we're looking at doing fixes here that will break compatibility at some point. So the real question is, do we want to have a release for the generals people before we do that? I think that's what's really happening here, discussion wise. And I think it's worth having that release if we can do it sort of like feasibly nicely.
Even if it takes like 6 months to do this.
What do you think, Zizan? Is it going to take us 6 months to do that?
I do expect that it takes longer, yeah, to serve both games, certainly. And personally, I'm not as concerned about time because I've been building for generals since 15 years. So for me, time is not really a factor. Like if you say 6 months, it's nothing really.
I kind of have the same opinion.
Yeah.
It's been almost 20 years, and yeah.
So I mean, in 5 years, I will still be building, right? And maybe even in 10 years, maybe even in 20 years, right? So I don't think that's a big. I mean, at least for me, like I don't want to rush things, and I think long term there's great value in like doing like a slow and steady approach and try to be like as careful and as careful as possible. And personally, I'm not sure about these other forks. So since you mentioned the Justin fork, I mean, yeah, I think there are like many great new features, but the question is also like, what is the outlook for long-term maintenance of these forks, right? Like, are these forks there for years to come? Will they build still in 5 years and have like many features in there and keep fixing things, or is this like a 1 month's work and then they drop and then they go to the next thing, right? So over the years I've always seen people come and go, right? And there's only a handful of people that will stick, right? Like the Thyme guys, for example, they will stick because they have started Thyme already 8 years ago, right? And there was a long-term goal for this for years to come. And so I think it's good to, I mean, it's good to like push for like quick gains. I see that, but I think it's also important to look at the long-term goals. And having generals, I think, is great. And personally, I'm 50-50 on this. Like generals, if we just have, if we just provide support for generals, so that just people can like launch a client and play single player and then like have fixes, it's great, great enough. But yeah, there is something to say about that we release 2 clients for both games to begin with that have great fixes that are shared for both games, right? And that are still compatible. And then like there's no discussion about, oh, why is generals not compatible? Why is 0 hour compatible? Could you not have done it both the same way? Like there will be some people who will be upset. But you're right. 0 hour is by far the most populated game of the 2, and it's much more important there.
Yeah, I don't think time is a big factor here. I could be wrong on that, but we've been doing this for a long time, so I don't think an extra 6 months is going to destroy anything. And as far as like these other projects that are adding features faster than us or whatever, this is all still open source code as far as I understand it. So we could always integrate this stuff later if we really want to, if they stop supporting it on their end or we want to support it on ours. So like it's all just available to us. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Well, I can add, but it's more an agreement with both you and Tesson that I've been 50-50 as well. It's like, I would like to support generals. I think that's a no-go, but mainly or a no-brainer, but mainly because from a single player perspective. I don't know enough about the multiplayer world in generals on how much it is worth to support it. On the other hand, I also agree with you, Mr. Xtad, and says on that if you release your first version, it's good to be able to say 0 hour is compatible with 1.04 and our generals version is compatible with 1.08. And you don't get half an angry community and asking why. And starting from that point, we're probably going to break compatibility for both games anyway. And we can like merge the code base even further, or decide to let go of certain aspects within generals. I'm not too concerned about compatibility with replays because you can always go back to 1.08 and have play your replays in there. I think that's actually something the launcher could facilitate, to be able to go back to different versions. So all replays that have ever been made can also always be replayed. But I think that's a discussion more for the launcher rather than from compatibility. So yeah, overall, I think I agree that we should keep compatibility at the moment. Time is not really a constraint, and then we can see in the future at what point we're going to break with it.
I think if I was just a player and I like both games, 0 Hour and Generals, then I think I would appreciate if there was a first release and both were like in the same spirit. They provide the same kind of functionality. In terms of replays, I think it would be great to have at least one Generals client that has fast forward and replays, right? That inherits this functionality, because it has always been a pain to watch replays in Generals because of that missing feature. So I think like having this kind of thing, and there are probably also some other features that are missing in Generals that are nice in 0 Hour, right? So like getting some of the nice features from Generals, from 0 Hour into Generals, I think that would be great. That is compatible, because then, and also like features that are native to Gentool, have those features in the native game client as well, and be multiplayer compatible with retail game. I think it would be great. But yeah, from developer perspective, I 100% agree. It's crap. Even supporting 0 Hour compatibility is is painful, right? So for us it's bad, but for the players I think it's the best, right? Even if it takes longer. But I don't think I don't see 0 Hour players pushing for like fast releases. I don't really see this. Like 0 Hour players are very happy with what they get when they get it, and they're very patient, and they're looking forward to things. But I don't see like anyone asking every day, "Hey, why are you so slow?" I don't think that's a big concern. People, the players, they just want to have new things, but only if they're very good. Like there are many releases in 0 hour that are not that great, and players don't care for it because it's just not there. Right, so I think it's also important to really focus on the quality and on the right strategies, right, and not just push something out because you can do it. Like, for example, I can tell you that over the years, people have tried to make many patches for the game, and the adoption was some tournament played or some like private network group here and there, but no adoption for any major purposes, right? Because players don't care much about it. They do care if it's of great quality. So you see like mods like Rise of the Reds and Contra and so on. These things are played because there's a lot to it, right? And I think that's a big focus, that we focus on quality, and then the adoption will automatically come. I don't see a future where our work is not adopted if we do it right, and if we make sure that our releases are well tested and stable. If we just rush it and we introduce a lot of crappy bugs that make it hard for the players, then that would be a different story. But if our releases are technically very nice, then players will adopt this.
Yeah, I agree.
Everybody,
And
everybody can see what happens when when a new game comes up and it's buggy as hell. Like reviews are bad, nobody cares about that. So, and we have time, and we can do a quality release.
0 hour is already buggy as hell. But this one, does Gentle actually work for generals?
It does, yes, for version 1.08.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was only for 0 hour.
It actually has all the features that it has for 0 hour, so nothing was skipped there.
Must have been so much work.
I think you made a great point, Saison, and I almost forgot about it with the fast replay option for generals. I think features like those are giving generals so much more value also in terms of being able to do replays that I think I'm 100% sold that we should keep compatibility for generals, at least for the first version, to get these type of features in.
Well, we can also always port single features over to generals. It's not a big issue. The issue I'm seeing is that we, as it currently stands, try to merge everything, and that is so much work. In my opinion, it's just wasted work.
Yeah, we don't need to merge everything in one go. We can say we only merge things that are easy to merge and features that we want to bring over. And then at some point we say, now is enough, no more merging. And then we just concentrate on fixing the games and readying for the first release and maybe a second release, and then we can continue later.
We will have to copy every PR until then for 2 games. It's just one. It's very annoying, and it's also you have to test both games all the time. That will never go away, even if we merge everything.
Yeah, true. The replication, yeah. I mean, this can be for things. Well, and so for files that are very similar, it's easy to do with the git diff, copying that over. For changes, I mean, what we can do is, like, as I said, if the change is too complicated to replicate on generals, then we can say, okay, only 0 hour gets this fix, right? But if it's easy to replicate on generals because the code is so similar, then we can do it. But yeah, you're right. It needs the testing. So that takes time. Yeah. I mean, even long term, yeah, you're right. I mean, it still needs testing in both games. Like if you make a change, but if code is pretty much unified for the most part in core, and you make like a rendering change, and you know all rendering is 100% the same between both games, then it's very likely that it will work in generals if it works in 0 hour, right? So it will be only a few things here and there that might need special attention, right?
I guess I do have some questions about what we're doing long term. Because like right now we're keeping compatibility, but once we do break that, don't we open up the possibility to just basically integrate both engines so that they're just one executable and we're just pulling a different set of assets depending on what we're booting up?
I'm not sure how if this is so easily possible, because it could be that Generals has some logics that are very specific to it, right? And so it would still require some if-def. That's my expectation. I'm not sure. I haven't reviewed this in detail, right? But I think there is such a possibility that there will be some if-def general 0 hour. So having one executable, yeah, would be fantastic, right? Makes it so much easier, but it's possible that maybe it requires more work and moving more things to data, right, to make it customizable. Like if there is logic that is custom to generals in 0 hour, then it's possible that it needs to be separate for now. But yeah, maybe there's a world where it can be unified by loading things out to data in ways, right?
Yeah, I could see that happening.
Like, so for example, we could say that in the global data.ini, there could be a setting like use this mode for this feature, right? That is available to both games, but in general's data, it's set to 1, and in 0 hour, it's set to 0, right? And then in this way, we could enable different kind of feature sets. But this would need to be provided by the executable and need to be carefully crafted, right?
Yeah, and that's just a example. It's not necessarily what we'd be doing, but like, yeah, the idea would be that you could signal what version of functionality you'd want to have, or we could spiral out the functionality to some sort of data set that we could load in. One of the two. But that's our long-term discussion that we're talking about. So like for the short term, we do have these two different games, but
yeah,
in the long term we could potentially cut it into just a one. Go ahead.
I think it would be very desirable to have one executable, but I think it's fair to go slow and steady to really make sure that we make no mistakes, right? And we have a clear picture of what can be merged cleanly here and there, and what needs to be done to mitigate differences.
Yeah, I agree that this is very long term, but I just, we're talking about, how certain things will never go away, and I just want to point out that it is potentially possible that some things will go away, even if we land up stuck with them for a while. We just have to figure that out. We're just not there yet.
I think for the time being, it probably would be desirable to keep the if-def general 0 hour to a minimum, and really like small lines of code. And if we have files that have huge differences, and there are probably a lot of these, then really only merge them when we have a good understanding and have eliminated a lot of the differences slowly to figure out, okay, what do both games really need, right? Because if we just slap 0 hour on top of generals, then we don't really know what happens, right? The game can change in unexpected ways, like cutscenes could behave different, or the campaign, like the soldiers don't reach the target anymore, and that the trigger doesn't work and the mission doesn't advance and all these kinds of things. So I think that you need to be careful with merging these things.
Yeah, I agree. It is a complicated and delicate process.
Okay, I heard a breath from Philivir. Maybe you also want to chime in?
Yeah, my opinion is pretty much that it's a waste of time to keep compatibility, but I don't care about Command and Conquer that much at all, so that's probably my exclusive view of things.
Yeah,
The franchise or the Generals, the game.
The franchise and the game, and I would much rather prefer moving towards the later Sage games like Battle for Middle Earth and not wasting 5 years of time on Generals.
yeah.
I don't think it's going to be 5 years. Is it going to be 5 years, Izan?
I don't hope so. No, I don't think so. It's a fair position. I mean, if someone is not invested into Generals or Zero Hour, then yeah, I can totally understand this position. But I mean, the goal is to
I mean,
cater.
it's not just Battle for Middle Earth. Also, the later Command and Conquer games are based on this engine, and I don't know. We are wasting our time on 2 out of 8 games, I think, and I think we would get a much larger fan base or user base when we were just aiming for the later games.
Yeah, I think that at least it's my opinion. Maybe someone else has other opinions, but for me, the main focus is Zero Hour and Generals by extension. The main focus for the Generals repository is not the later games. Only if like Zero Hour can or Generals can benefit from this, and this, and it doesn't hinder its development in ways. But the goal, as far as I'm concerned, is not to cater to all Generals, all Command and Conquer games, or all Battle for Middle Earth games, because I don't
The Sage Engine games.
Yeah, because I personally don't do anything in this direction, right? So I won't be able to review or test this, right? Because there will be enough to do for Zero Hour. But certainly, like any engine changes that benefit General Zero Hour, I'm totally welcome to this, right? Because it allows to extend the functionality for it, right? Or make it more beautiful or whatever, right? So that's certainly fine. And if it means that there will be some other people working on Battle for Middle Earth stuff in parallel, then it's fine. But yeah, for me, it won't change the focus on Zero Hour. So I personally won't push for other games. But if it doesn't collide with Generals, then yeah, I don't have problems if there are other developments in parallel. But it shouldn't break Generals in Zero Hour, right? So there shouldn't be any changes made to the core that will break Zero Hour and Generals in ways that we do not want the game to work, right? So the game should always run in the way we want it to run, right? And we shouldn't say, okay, because we need to accommodate this other title, that we need to make this change in Generals, right? So this should not happen, in my opinion.
I think it also kind of gets thorny when we're talking about all these other games, because to be kind of blunt about it, they had a lot of extra development time to change the engine between all these releases. We're talking about years of development time. So supporting all of that, it becomes a much bigger effort for the community, to reconstruct a lot of this from scratch. I don't know how much we would actually want to integrate of that at this point. Right now, I think we're just trying to get 2 video games running, and that's just kind of where we're at. And then, if we can integrate more stuff, we'll integrate more from there. But I think there is a possibility that we could get more of these open source releases for these later games at like a later point. Since EA has shown an interest in at least doing this much, they may continue going in this direction. So, if we put in the work to get the engine up to date with what's in, say, Command & Conquer 3 or Kane's Wrath, then if they release an open source, C&C 3 or Kane's Wrath, then it's like, oh, okay, there's all that work kind of out the window.
Yeah, it would be interesting if EA made more releases for later titles, right? Yeah, I don't know if it will happen. I never expected that the generals would be open source, certainly. So to me, it looks like anything is possible as long as the current people that are in charge right now are kept in charge. Yeah, so if there is like an open source Tiberian Wars and so on, then yeah, these code bases become the base for these games, right? And generals will be the code base for generals, right? So I think that's the main take there.
Yep.
So Philippe, can you elaborate more on like your goals for the later games, like how you want to build this? You have never talked about this really.
Yeah, sure. I was working on OpenStage, I think, for 15 years by now, and we have all the information available right now. I mean, we know everything about the game. We know the formats. We know it's pretty much all already done in OpenStage in some way, but it just doesn't play like the real Battle for Middle Earth. It's still very early on, and now with the source release, we can get a much better copy, I think, and it would make sense to go from the Generals code base, in my opinion, because it's like 80% the same.
Mm-hmm. So basically, you would like to reverse engineer the. So you say you have replicated the functionality of Battle for Middle Earth, also like for the game logic parts, right? And
yeah, we have like all ini blocks, like all behaviors. We know what they do in theory. We don't know the exact numbers, but I don't really care about network compatibility for any of those games. So that's not a goal for me.
okay,
but I think we could get something that plays like Battle for Middle Earth.
Yeah, okay. It sounds pretty interesting, I have to say, yeah. I mean, this is probably also something that Thompson's can help you with to fill in the gaps for like specifics to like really replicate the one-to-one logic, right? Yeah. I mean, as long as, I mean, to me, it sounds fair. It just needs to make sure that like these Battle for Middle Earth specific logics, that they don't creep into core. So maybe we also need to me it sounds like we need to have some separation between core and generals and core and Battle for Middle Earth then, right? Because if we now move stuff to core, but in game engine there will be a lot of general specific stuff like Spectre gunship, for example, right? Like Battle for Middle Earth doesn't have a Spectre gunship, right? So maybe it sounds like that there should be a generals part which contains both generals and 0 hour, and then a Battle for Middle Earth, and both use core, right?
Yeah, but don't think that Battle for Middle Earth did remove any of the Command and Conquer fields. I mean, everything that was defined in INI is still possible in Battle for Middle Earth. So there are like tanks and stuff like that. They just didn't remove it. So it's pretty straightforward to just keep the code as it is. And I mean, backporting some of the Battle for Middle Earth things like normal maps and other graphics related stuff is probably useful for generals as well.
I agree with
If you want to get better visuals, I don't want to invent new V3D chunks because it makes no sense to me.
Okay, maybe we can have like a chat about this another time, like a separate discussion, because it's not really related to this meeting. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting topic. Okay, so what's the conclusion of this meeting for generals? So yeah, so it sounds like Helmut is against it because of time issues, time concerns. Philivir doesn't care at all because it's generals, understandably. Some of us think that there is value, at least for the first release, like for 0 Hour, to have like a client that has features from 0 Hour and fixes that are nice. So right now, there has been no need yet to break. That's my observation. There was no need to break compatibility, right? So everything just works. So how about we just keep on going? We just unify what we can without risking too much. And when we see, oh, now it's too much, then we just stop unifying and we just concentrate on fixing. And our primary focus on fixing is 0 Hour, and porting the fixes to generals is more like an afterthought. But it's still something that we should pursue, especially when it's easy to do. Yeah, is that fair?
I like that.
Yeah, I agree. I like that too.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
I don't like it, but I suppose I didn't convince anybody.
You convinced me.
But I think the other side of it as well is that when we do decide to break compatibility with 0 Hour, if there's any features which were in generals which we liked, we can port them over to 0 Hour and make use of them. Or if there were things done in generals that were slightly different or done in a better way for performance reasons in 0 Hour, then we could make use of that.
Say again.
Oh, just kind of going back on the example of the other day when we were talking about particle systems and stuff as well, where there were features in generals which were more full-featured compared to 0 Hour, then keeping both code bases around and not just overwriting generals entirely with 0 Hour means that we can still port stuff across from generals to 0 Hour at a later date when we do decide to break compatibility, and then we can actually implement more featureful, well, just better features, you could say, which may have been part of generals originally, but were optimized and simplified in 0 Hour.
We can always look in the Git history what's there and port things over. I don't think that's again an issue.
I think 0 Hour developers have also fat fingered a bunch of things. So it looks like not all the changes that are on 0 Hour are for the better. There are some weird things. So yeah, I do see that we will. Some things from generals will win over 0 Hour, but it's probably not much. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in this case of keeping both code bases still just means that we do have that overview and oversight when we do want to look back over these, at least, when we do decide to break compatibility.
Okay. Okay, so to me it sounds like we just keep on moving like we have been so far. Then we will probably reach a point where unification halts at some point. So right now our focus has been on stability fixes, right? Besides the unification and building stuff. So stability fixes, memory issues and stuff like this. I think for the time being, there's value in keeping this effort and not focus on minor fixes for the time being, and do the minor fixes more when the bigger fixes are in, because it's too much noise right now to do like these small fixes. Like for example, I mean it's great that Helmut, for example, did the replay fix with more replays in there, but like this is a minor thing, right? Having more replays in there. I mean, for some players, it's probably a huge deal, right? But like conceptually, it's a minor thing. So I think for now, it would be great to do more fixing for crashes, corruptions, and memory leaks, and all these kinds of things for generals in 0 hour. In parallel, we work on unifying things that are easy. Philivier does a lot of changes towards Linux and 64-bit support. So that's great. Yeah, I think, I mean, we do a lot of stuff, but we don't yet focus on small fixes. But I think that is great. The problem is with the small fixes, it takes focus away from the more pressing concerns, right? And plus, it's also like if we make these changes now, it has a greater chance of breaking something in ways that then needs to be revisited, right? And that's why I would say we first work towards like a stable base that runs better than the original, but doesn't have like all the minor fixes yet, right? But it's just stable and runs well for both generals and 0 hour. And I think that would be a great achievement.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too.
Has there been any more consideration of the sort of time frame when we were going to start to think about that initial release?
I would say, so it also depends on the development of the launcher that happens in parallel, where one guy is working on. We need that launcher to like publish it and onboard the people. I would say we probably reach a state where we say, oh wow, the game runs better and it's more stable and feels smoother. So performance is probably also a consideration to reduce the lagging. Plus, we probably need to port some of the helpful features from Gentool to have natively in the game, like the cursor lock in window mode, for example. Stuff like this needs to be ported natively into the game. Otherwise, it's hard to play the original game without Gentool, some of the features. Like I saw that Helmut, for example, already made a change for centering the window and stuff like this. We need certainly these features. Yeah.
So what's your estimate? When will it be ready for the first release?
Estimate. It's always hard. When developer gives an estimate, then it's probably 3 times that. I don't know. I think I would be happy if it would take just 6 months. I don't know.
Yeah, I think 6 months is a little bit optimistic. The current case, at least.
Hello?
Could be, yeah. I mean, we probably, I think we right now probably we just need to focus on fixing as much big things as we can and progressing with the unification, progressing with the 64-bit stuff, and yeah, just trying to build like a good foundation that just runs well without big problems, that is easy to use for developers, has some features that makes it easier for players. We don't yet need to eyeball like new backend and new renderer and all the stuff that would be nice to have, but it's not essential to run the Windows runtime, because the first release is just for Windows, right? So if it runs on DirectX 8, good enough, right? So we're only looking at stability fixes and building the foundation. Yeah, I mean, if let's say the launcher is ready to publish a version in, let's say, 3 months, then we could say, okay, we take a snapshot now and we just release it, right, as a pre-release, and just put it there. Maybe it won't be that much yet, but if it is an improvement over the original, then players can already use it, right? And I think that's all that matters. As long as it's compatible with the original game, then they're free to use it. The only drawback is if the experience is worse than the experience with original retail game plus Gen Tool, then they won't adopt this, right? So I think that's why it's important to get some of the features from Gen Tool natively into the client, like the cursor lock, window position. There's some other things. I would need to look up the feature set, but yeah, it's not much, but some things. Because the original game client is a bit shitty to in functionality wise.
I guess with something like widescreen resolution support.
Yeah, the camera, for example. Yeah, if you have a 16, the game was created for about 4:3, right? So if you run it with 16:9, the camera is zoomed in, and no one wants to play like this. Yeah, so things like this certainly we need to fix. Yeah, it's very important.
I'm on 32:9. I'm zoomed in even with Gentle.
Yeah, even, but this is how the game was built, for the reason that it's not as performance heavy if you don't have too much things on screen, right?
Yeah.
But there's a charm to this kind of close-up experience, because it makes it more a micro-focused game and not the spam fest, right?
I think adding to the question on the timeline, if I look how progress is currently going, there is great momentum. There are a lot of amazing people currently working very hard on all the changes, the stability, the unification. There is a lot of code, of course, already available in Gempatcher that can be ported over. I think in terms of timeline, we can have a good solid release before Christmas. As a rough estimate, I think the Achilles heel at the moment, and I don't have a really clear view on that, but it's the launcher. I think it's a single person that's currently working on it. I think that's at the moment the largest risk on will that be available by Christmas to distribute a good version of Generals and 0 Hour.
What's the repository for that, by the way?
So I think we missed what you said there.
Okay. I was just asking for the link. Zizan dropped it in the chat. You can keep going.
Okay.
At least part of it. Add the GitHub in front of it.
Okay, I don't know what in what code it is. If there are people here that could help this person as well in developing. But as Season said, it's important to have a good. If we release a 0-hour community patch and a general community patch, it's important that it's a good patch, that it improves on, or at least the same, but preferably improves on what it is now with Gempatcher. But at the same time, a good launcher is just as important to have out there, because if the launcher experience is shit, people don't want to use the launcher, and you're not going to get the our patch across. More important, that having that launcher installed means we can keep distributing our updates, because it's at least I presume it's going to be an auto updater for our community patches. At the moment, I feel that's where the Achilles heel is in terms of timeline, rather than the generals and 0-hour executable itself.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Mm-hmm.
Hello again. I also would like to say that for the new players, or for the people who are tracking the progress, or who do not know a lot of information about the patch, they always ask things about it in this Discord server, about the state of the progress of the project, of what was accomplished. And I saw that Tintin Hamas already, the Dolphin guy, the admin, I forgot his nickname on Discord, he posted that a link that tracks the progress on GitHub in percentage for the work that was done on core progress or something like that. And I would, because there are a lot of questions every day, almost every day, about the state of the progress on the project. I don't know, maybe create a separate page and add it to the, I guess, pinned comment, where the people who want to know about the state of the project can click on and see the status of the project, and it would be looked at in a very simple way. So you open the page and you see how much progress is done, how much progress is still pending. And I think that Sezon already had something like this for Thyme, where when you go to the page and you see how much progress is left for completion. And I think it would be great to have in pinned comments, so that people could see the status of the project and would not be discouraged when they do not receive a reply on what is the state of the project, or if the information that some people who can provide there is not complete about the state of the project. I think it will be very helpful to support the people's, I guess, expectations, and to let them know when they can come back to the project and see the results. So thank you for letting me speak. This was my take. Thank you. I want to thank every contributor for their work, and keep up the good work.
Is anyone still around, or are we finished?
Oh, I was just talking, but I had myself muted. Oops.
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 Oof.
Oof. Oof. What did I say? I said DM Green. So you talked about setting progress indicators. I think that's a topic for management people. It shouldn't be on us developers to provide overviews for the people to see how things are progressing, but we will reach certain milestones which can be communicated, right? So, for example, if we reach that all our tools and both games compile with x64, right? Then that is something to say. Okay, now everything runs in 64-bit, everything's fine, right? So, for example, this, or if both games would be merged into one executable, that would be a milestone, right? So, I think there will be points where we say, okay, we have achieved this, and right, this is now there, but it will be also part of change logs. Then, yeah, I guess it's something for a management person to do if there is such a demand. But I don't think us developers should focus on this because we're already busy enough with a lot of things.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. But I thought that we have management people who can note that down so that the people will not look other way or get discouraged by the lack of progress. Or visible progress, I guess, from their point of view when they are not on the development channel.
Yeah, I mean, for us developers, it's easy to see the progress as we can look into the commit history, right? And we like are in communication and we read the pull request, so we see the progress. Yeah, yeah, for visitors, I mean, I do think that even if we provide noobs with information, then they will still miss it, right? So let's say you have a page which shows progress, then a majority of the people won't know where this page is, and they won't see the progress either way, right? So I think if someone wants to follow the progress, there are enough ways to do that because everything that we do is publicly visible, right? There's no backdoor meetings, right? In close quarters, everything is public, so people can see.
Yeah, aside from this closed door meaning that they can't see.
Yeah.
I guess some aspects
that
as well are difficult to put visibility on because we're still very much in the discovery process with parts of the game itself. So it's only if we actually come across a problem can we really bring it up to say that there's been progress with it, etc.
That's true. I think if we just point people to the GitHub when they ask, that's kind of enough in terms of visibility. They can see what's happening there.
Yeah, I would agree. For now, like link to the GitHub repository is good because there everything is there, right? So I mean, it's hard to look at for noobs. That's true.
Yeah.
But there's a wealth of information, so they won't miss a beat. Yeah.
I was talking about like the link that I posted in the chat that was posted by Arctic Dolphin, where the people who are interested in the progress can go to this link, and there on GitHub they can see the for example, this is Code Foundation build up, and there is 80% complete. I was talking about like this simple thing for a simple question about the project.
What we could maybe do is create more types of these milestones. So, for example, I was already thinking that maybe we should have a milestone for like a stability fixes, right? So right now we put a lot of stability fixes here into the Code Foundation build-up, but maybe we should have a separate milestones where we put bug reports and all the pull requests that are related to crashes and like the critical stuff and that would be like a nice milestone to look at. So we have the code foundation built up that is mostly targeted for like all the building, like it's all the CMake stuff and unifying things, and yeah. So we could have different milestones. We have a milestone for the x64. We have a milestone for the Linux. Yeah, we could have more milestones, and then we could link these maybe in the front page, these milestones. Maybe there's like a GitHub widget that shows like this completion percentage thingy next to it as a widget. And then we could say, okay, here's this milestone, this complete, this, and then we have some bars. Maybe that would work.
I think yes, it's easy to set up, I guess, because it's on GitHub, and I don't know the specifics, but I guess it's not that hard to set up on GitHub to have a page with milestones like this, and it will be very helpful for everyone involved to see how much progress was already done. So I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe. So I can offer to create this stability milestone and then move bug reports and fixes that we have already made and move them into this. So that because the stability is like our like first big milestones in terms of like getting a good foundation, right? That just runs well. Then we could have another milestone like for performance, for example, right? And then, yeah, we could link these. Maybe VTEX can help us with putting this onto the front page. We still need to finish our README and our contributing page. So that still needs to be done. Yeah, we can do that.
I was thinking about soon going through all the changes and create the change logs for those. And
that's also
get
great.
the change log thing down. So when we also So when we also create major releases, then we can like custom write these, so it's only like relevant information for newbies or whatever. They'll be shown there. Whereas if you go into like the GitHub page, you can look into each commit or like changelog for each merge.
If you could take care of the changelog write-ups, this would be fantastic. I think for the changelog, it's very important that we establish it's a different topic, but you need to establish like a very consistent way of describing the changes, because I've noticed that in the changelog for the patch that it's very hard to look at changelogs when they are written in different styles. Like if you have different authors writing the changelog in different styles, then it becomes hard to like understand what it says, right? But if you have like at least for me, like when I look at this, like English is not my native language, so it needs to be easy. And if the structure of the change description is consistent, then it's really much easier to understand and follow what it actually says. But if like every change is different, and so that's why I think it needs like one author that like focuses on this and pumps out like consistent change logs instead of everyone doing it, right? I think there's great value in this. We can have a separate talk about this.
Yeah, so maybe not having it automatic already, because we haven't decided on a way to do it.
Yeah, I think there's great value in having this crafted consistently by a person, because every person describes things differently, and then it's hard to like really make it a consistent look for the changes descriptions.
Yeah, we can have a talk another time if it becomes relevant.
Yeah, it's certainly a different discussion. There's also one other topic I wanted to quickly ask if there are any concerns, since Filivir is here, Maula and Aero. For next week, I had thought about making a change to the code base to change all the tabs, or the code tabs, indentation tabs, from tab to 2 spaces. Do you have any concerns about this?
I prefer if we could introduce Clang format right away and not just replace the tabs, but instead let all the formatting be done by Clang format.
Okay. I personally wouldn't have wanted to go that far yet. I think it would be fine to just like do like small, easy wins so far. Like, so for example, the tapping thingy, and also like there's a story of like there's some wild file names, like like there's some CPPs that have lowercase and then the header is uppercase, stuff like this. So like do like small refactors instead of slapping big refactor over everything, because then it also becomes harder to merge all the changes eventually. I'm not sure.
How may this impact the? There are currently around 60 pull requests open. Will it be much harder to merge those if we're going to change all the spacing? Basically, I don't know exactly how GitHub deals with that. If it can recognize the spacing or that it thinks it's a full line change.
Yeah, I think if you rebase on top of main, it will come in as a big fat merge conflict. Unless, so with the white space change, you can ignore white space on merge, typically in a merge tool. So that should go smoothly if we just change white spaces.
I would then suggest to try that out with one file first, just to be sure. Otherwise, we have 60 PRs that cannot be merged anymore.
Yeah, so my strategy would have been to just like do certain refactors in batches. Don't like do a big format change. It just changes everything at once and creates a big change. But do it a bit in steps and just one after another over time, right? Because I mean, there's the formatting is not so much broken in the original game. It's, as long as you use tabs for two characters wide, then it looks okay, right? But yeah, it's not like there are many differences between files, and so yeah, certainly a Clang format in the long run would be nice, but for this I would like to have like a really great rule set for the Clang format, because what I've seen so far, like in Sime, for example, the Clang format was awful and really a headache, at least for me. I hated it. So if we
I
can,
liked it.
you liked it, okay.
Yeah.
For me, it was a headache because it never formatted in a way that I would have expected the code to be written. Right? It just slaps its rules on there, and it just looks trash in ways, right? And it makes it.
I think it's really inconsistent right now how we have it in the code base, and I don't really care how we format it with which rule set, but everything looks better when it's consistent. So I don't mind if the braces are in the same line as the statement. It's not really relevant. It just has to be consistent.
I agree. Achieving consistency in the format, and that everyone like is forced to have this conformant to the format is nice. But yeah, maybe is there someone who does this kind of thing, like formatting, and like is good at this, like setting it up?
I mean, we have some rules at work and other projects, but probably what I prefer is not what you prefer.
I think
So yeah, we just have to make a compromise at some point.
I think OmniBlade has opened already a change, but I haven't. It was a draft, I think. I don't know if it was ready to be looked at or not. But yeah, basically, there's a discussion somewhere on the GitHub repository which discusses a bit about it, and there I did drop some of my pain points that I had with Sime. So, for example, a pain point was that the parameter packing on function calls has like 4 different styles, right? And so like depending on how much it exceeds the line length, it packs it in different ways, right? And the problem I have with this kind of different packing styles is that there are too many variations. Like, and the problem is you look at this and you have to read over different styles basically. So there's too many variations of styling that this applies. So I think narrowing it down to simpler styles, there's great value, because then things look more consistently, as opposed to having like all kinds of different styles just because this line is a bit over the length limit of the line, right?
Yeah, but I think what's simple is also subjective. So I find things simple that other finds complicated, and vice versa. So it's not really something you can qualify in the measurement.
Okay, well, it's a different topic. Maybe we can talk about it in another session. Yeah. Okay, but is it okay if I do like fix the white spaces just on its own? Or is it already?
Yeah, if it doesn't break any pull requests, but I'm not sure what's the benefit if we apply Clang format a week later.
Yeah, my expectation is that we won't apply Clang format too soon. I'm not sure. It wasn't a focus so far.
I would have applied it on day one, but I think we have different priorities there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could make a push for Clang format. Yeah. I guess, okay, maybe instead of looking into fixing the white space, I can look into the Clang format and look at what OmniBlade has drafted, see if it looks nice. And yeah, it will mean that, so there's a problem with Clang format that if you don't have the exact version of the Clang format, then it may produce different outcomes. This has been also a pain point on Thyme, and I don't know if there's a solution to this. So, for example, Clang uses, Thyme used Clang 10, Clang format 10, and so if someone had a newer version, it formatted slightly different. And then the problem is that person wants to push to main branch, but then the format checker will always fail because the format checker uses format version 10, right? And so we need to nail this somehow and make it easy, that people don't run into this kind of issue, because this is a blocker. Like if they can't get the format right, yeah, then they either need to hand edit it or they will give up, right?
You didn't mind that when I had to put the pull request numbers into the comments. That's a block as well. I think we can just make the CI use the latest Clang format version, and if it fails, we can ask the contributors to update their version. I think that's reasonable.
Okay, so in regards to generals, it sounds like we don't forcibly break compatibility yet, as long as it's possible to keep it. We try to fix more stuff. Try to add some of the nice quality of life features to make the client better, but only the big stuff, not the minor stuff. Right? So no minor fixes or features, just big ones that are important. Like, okay, so the question is, like, so for example, the camera change, there's already like a draft by some author from a while ago. I don't know if it's if the time is already right for this. Maybe not. I think for now, I think it's fair that we still focus on stability, crashes, and these kind of things. And then once we have this more stable client, then we can sway into things like performance and these kinds of features. Is that fair?
That's probably fair.
Okay. Good. I have no questions. For me, the direction is clear and I never run out of work. So for me, it's not a problem.
Regarding the white space issue, I want to avoid fixing conflicts in all my PRs, so I said that can be avoided somehow, either by waiting until those things are merged or finding a solution that.
Sorry, you're very quiet there.
I understood what you said. You said that you're concerned about your changes conflicting after Clang format or white space fixes and not being able to merge those things. Yeah. Yeah, it's a concern. Maybe we can make a push to like finalize many of the current changes that are not small fixes, but like important ones. So for example, your change for the headless client, try to finalize it. Yeah, we have too many changes piling up, in part because some of these things don't matter yet, right? I mean, from day one, someone opened fixes for the game when it didn't even compile on our main branch. So some changes are a bit too eager. Yeah. I mean, it can happen that some changes cannot be rebased on main. But so far, we don't have any change that is super big, right? So in the worst case, you tell me and I hand replicate it in ways, or I find some trick to apply formatting after the change and then merging it on top of the main branch. And yeah, there are probably ways to do this. I think that's not a big concern because we don't have a change right now that touches like 1,000 lines and it's very complicated, right?
We still have the FFmpeg pull request open.
But that is like standalone files, right? So it's not like I think the bigger concern is changes that are very involved in EA code, right? That are affected by formatting changes.
What I would suggest is to announce these white space changes something like a month or so before, and then we can try to merge the PRs until then, and everybody knows that they create a new PR in the time. They will eventually or maybe have to fix the conflicts. But yeah, if we have some time to prepare for that, I think that would be nice.
You mean like set up a date when we want to go for this, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, we can say, okay, we prepare the Clang format, we set up the rules and we agree on it, and then we only realize it after announcing when we would do it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we can do that. Okay, do we have any other questions or concerns? No? Okay, well, then thank you for attending, and I wish you a great evening or day, wherever you are. And yeah, I wish you best of success. And hopefully we can build a great 0 hour in generals. Goodbye.
Thank you for hosting.
Goodbye.
And goodbye.
Ooh, thanks for the meeting. Catch you later, everyone.
Thank you, guys. It's coming link.